Hello YouTube, and welcome aboard the Havilland Vampire FB.50, or as the Swedish Air Force calls it, the J28B. This is one of 3 vampires currently available in War Thunder, the other 2 being the original Vampire FB.5 in the British Air Tree and the Vampire FB.52A in the Italian Tech Tree. All 3 vampires currently sit at a battle rating of 7.3. But that doesn't mean their performance is quite identical. As far as I know, the airframes are pretty much the same, so in terms of maneuverability, they're all on par. However, the engine on the J28B and the Italian Vampire are a tad stronger than the engine on the British one. But the biggest difference between the Swedish Vampire and the other vampires in War Thunder is its guns. You see, all vampires are armed with quad 20mm Hispano cannons with 600 rounds between them. Now, if you've played British jets before, you know the problems associated with these guns. Low velocity, and a tendency to spark like crazy, especially from behind. The J28's guns are the same Hispanos, but with one critical difference. They get Swedish ammunition belts. That means instead of the unreliable mix of British high-explosive fragmentation incendiary and high-explosive fragmentation semi-armor-piercing incendiary shells, say that 3 times fast, in the air target's belts, this plane gets pure high-explosive fragmentation incendiary. It might be a placebo effect from the blinding white tracers, but these shells seem to be much more consistent with dealing damage than the British belts. And with an airframe as insanely nimble as the vampires, having guns that can instantly obliterate enemies means you can throw this plane into multiple engagement scenarios and pluck enemy after enemy out of the sky before they even know what hit them. And speaking of the airframe, if you're familiar with the Meteor, the Vampire is superior to the Meteor in almost every way. It rolls better, turns faster, and with its thick, robust wings, it doesn't even rip if you sit on the elevator at max speed and pull up to like 12 Gs. This thing is practically impossible to shake once it's under 6. Your only hope is to outrun it, but with the guns on the J28B, you won't get the chance if it gets the drop on you. And I certainly get the drop on a lot of enemies this game. not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping that this F-84 was going to hold out just a little bit longer so that I could be the one to shoot it down. Anyway, let me talk a little bit more about the plane in this lull in the action. The one weakness of the Vampire airframe is its roll rate. This plane is very wide and flat, so it's not very surprising that it has a hard time flipping over. When fighting American jets in particular, it's extremely noticeable if you try to force an overshoot in a rolling scissors. Because the Vampire is so symmetric, however, there is something that you can do to compensate. Instead of fully rolling over, you can actually follow maneuvers by pulling negative Gs. As an aside, this is a tactic that you can use in most fighters if you're having trouble keeping up in a rolling scissors. Pulling negative Gs in the middle of a roll gives you back a lot more nose authority and sort of resets the plane for the next merge, assuming of course that you're pulling tight enough to still stay out of your opponent's guns. For some reason, I never see people using this tactic, and it catches opponents off guard almost all the time. I will say though, most of the time in the Vampire, you can turn hard enough that you'll just win the flat scissors before it even becomes a rolling scissors. Just like in this particular dogfight. And I'm just going to fast forward this part because it takes me an absurdly long time to catch this guy. I don't know how the A2D goes so fast. It's technically a prop, isn't it? Oh well. And that's pretty much the end of that battle. I'm out of ammo, so I head back to base, but before I can even make it to the runway, the last enemy is shot down, and the game is over. I must say, the sun looks absolutely stunning this particular match. But you know what doesn't look stunning? This. Please fix this, Gaijin. The last game was a Downtier against likes of the Tiger Cat and Sky Shark, so naturally I have to show an Uptier this time around. The playstyle of the Vampire doesn't change very much in an Uptier versus a Downtier, since you're still the most nimble plane around, even against the Comet. But your windows of opportunity do narrow significantly because of how much faster your opponents are. Honestly, this thing probably shouldn't have to fight Sabres in the MiG-15s when it can barely break 800 kilometers per hour in a straight line, but with the state of, say it with me, battle rating compression, you do end up doing it often. Thankfully, the improved ammunition of the J28B comes in clutch for those narrow snapshots, and there are plenty of those in this game. So, as you saw in this game and the last, the Vampire really revels in those big, hectic furballs where it can rapidly switch targets and catch enemies when they're vulnerable. When the opponents use their speed advantage and boom and zoom, however, the Vampire can become a very frustrating aircraft to fly. I spend the rest of this game just chasing people around the map, but being unable to catch them because I'm just too slow. Not exactly glamorous, I'm afraid. For once though, I won't speed this part up, just so that you can get a sense of what it feels like to fly this plane in an Uptier. And that completes the ace. The Vampire was already one of my favorite early jets in War Thunder, and the Swedish belts on the J28B only make it that much better. If you're looking for a jet where maneuvering tactics from the prop era still serve it well, this might just be the plane for you. I'll end this video with a longer dogfight between the J28B and an F-80A Shooting Star. Thanks for stopping by.